Hello everybody, it's Lorraine Alternative Homesteading on October 15, 2024. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you everybody for listening to that interview with Richard Moore. I received a lot of feedback about all the interruptions. It was a little frustrating for me too. Wasn't able to complete some of my thoughts, and it became very disjointed for some of the people listening, at least for the first time. So I'm going to read a chapter from a book that I've read from before. It's called Gang-Stalking and Mind Control, The Destruction of Society Through Community Spying Networks by A.K. Forwood. And the back of the book reads, a secret underground lurks throughout society, a sophisticated network of secret policing units that are cropping up in every community. It is made up of people from all walks of life who are operating as a fascist secret police force against all freedom-loving citizens of the Western world. They pretend to be serving a good cause, but they're creating terror in our neighborhoods and destroying lives, one person at a time. This secret network is not only used for targeting individuals with systemic harassment, but those within it are often involved in sexual exploitation, blackmail, Satanism, and mind control. This book is written by a target for targets. Gang-Stalking and Mind Control is an inside look at the sinister side of this growing epidemic. So I'm going to read from the chapter on page 88 called Turning the Tables. We'll see how far I get on this. It's rather late because the criminals knocked me out again. Their favorite form of torture, aside from theft, vandalism, vibrating my body while I'm sleeping, is putting me to sleep. Turning the tables. Everybody's a creature of habit. This means that those people who are targeting people through gang stalking and mind control techniques and technologies while being reliant on the target's habitual responses to stimuli are also equally prone to responding to things out of habit. You know, like the creepos that drive back and forth and you catch them online and post the videos online. To put this another way, they're prone to following patterned actions, and this is just as much of a weakness in them as it is in a target or anyone else. The benefit is understanding that that the target who is aware of the gang stalking or mind control that they're being subjected to can use this to fight back. Patterns are the key. Habits and routines are patterns, and the gang stalker or mind controller is reliant on knowing a target's habits and routines in order to establish a ground base of controllable situations in regards to that particular target. Unless a target is being consistently and unceasingly controlled in their very thoughts and actions through some sort of technological means, they have the opportunity to learn about the perpetrator's own habits and routines and find a way to use them to fight back. To learn the perpetrator's habits and routines, the target needs to watch for patterns in the perpetrator's methods of operation, sort of like every day at a particular time in the evening, all of my guineas start running to the top of the hill, circling someone or something, cackling incessantly. So either the perpetrator is on the property and they're catching the creepo, or there's a creepo on the property in another direction, causing the guineas to run in that direction for me to look so that they could be breaking into my house or something else. Once a target has clearly established some of the patterns of their antagonists, they can begin to turn the control around. It probably won't be enough to liberate the target completely, but it will allow them to learn some things about their assailants and the extent of their abilities, which will give the target the ability to forestall some of the methods being used and throw off their assailants to some extent. This effectively gives the target certain power over their antagonists, and in realizing this, the target has an opportunity to stop playing into their hands, to compose themselves mentally and emotionally, and to begin approaching this situation with cunning determination to defeat the efforts of their assailants. You know, like when Scarlet Marks drove back and forth 4 times, spewing things and honking her horns, and I just looked at her, videotaping it, and said nothing. In order to do this, the target needs to pay attention to their own patterns and recognize their assailants' own patterns, responses to them. For instance, if the target realizes that every time they have their routine morning shower, telephone ring, and the telephone will ring, causing them to habitually jump out of the shower and answer the phone just to hear a dial tone, then they have discovered a pattern. Once this is realized, they're in a position to disrupt the assailant's little game and turn it around. There are a number of things that might be done to achieve this. First, the target could choose to simply ignore the telephone at that time and remain in the shower. Second, the target could break his or her usual routine and continually change the time of the day that they have their shower and see if the call still occurs while showering. Third, if the target has the psychological strength to withstand the possible repercussions, they could set up an answering machine that would give a taunting message to their assailants that would hopefully drive them to anger in the hopes that it will cause them to make a mistake. Other possibilities exist besides these, and every situation is different for every target. So a little consideration of what the assailant's main objective might be will offer some ideas as to how to disrupt their activities. You know, like when you use a spotlight instead of a flashlight on your property and it freaks them out and then they go berserko and then you catch them and then you can record all their sinister behaviors. In the above scenario, the assailants will be informing the target through their own responses that they're watching or at least listening to the target, and this means that they're probably using ordinary surveillance equipment, cameras, and microphones. In more sophisticated operations, they may be using advanced technologies such as through-the-wall surveillance. The only other possibility is that they are remote viewing the target, which requires an individual to spend some time and effort psychically focusing on the target each time this occurs, which is not very likely, but it's quite possible. Let's assume that the controllers, the psychopaths, are using ordinary surveillance technologies to watch and listen in on the target, while they're jerking off. In this case, there's a very likely chance that these technologies can be located and removed. Purchasing an electromagnetic field EMF detector will give the target the ability to sweep their home and other locations, including themselves, to find any electronic devices that are transmitting a signal. And just by the way, when you do that, they'll turn off the signal. Any devices that are found should be removed and either destroyed or handed over to a trustworthy third party for safekeeping. A lawyer, well, they're saying here, a lawyer would be such a person. I don't know about that. I might choose somebody other than an attorney. There's another possible scenario in which the target can turn it around and begin to control the actions of the assailants. Suppose that the target knows that someone is stationed in the suite above their own, and that whoever it is involved in monitoring the target at particular times of the day or night. Sort of like the person that's on my property right now, about 50, 60 feet past my mailbox. Right there, where all the ruts are between my property and my neighbors, that's where they park. And then, of course, after I go to sleep, they drive up on the county road and they're opposite my house. Yeah, I know your routine. I know the routine there. So what the target can do is the target can begin to play cat and mouse with the monitor, finding pretexts for knocking on the door to the suite or causing general disruption to the monitor's activities. Like what I did is I purchased a strobe light. I don't use it all the time, but it's fun when it's on. It's all different colors, and it's a spotlight inside of my house that kind of sweeps around the ceiling, all different colors, just swirling around. Since these people are sometimes interested in getting involved in the life of the target on a personal level as possible, because they're perverts, the target might even tempt the upstairs monitor into a false friendship, just for the sake of getting useful information on them, which can then be used against them and their accomplices. All is fair in love and war, after all, and the target should not feel that it's wrong to do to these people what they're doing to the target. As long as these fascist assholes are willing to trample our fundamental rights and act out immoral and unethical practices, a person has the necessary right to fight back with equivalent means and force. But I just got tongue-tied. An important question that the target needs to ask themselves and find an answer to is whether a particular person who is involved with a gang-stalking group is involved knowingly or unknowingly. Knowing this will help the target to begin to understand the circumstances of their own situation better, and this will allow them to deal with it in the best manner possible. It wouldn't be good to begin doing to an assailant what is being done to the target if the assailant isn't even aware of their participation in a gang-stalking operation. And they may be unwittingly manipulated themselves through mind control. So it's very important to establish a level of conscious participation that a particular assailant is involved in a target's abuse. It should also be understood that whoever is behind the mind control and gang-stalking operations, they usually rely on the efforts of people to do the monitoring of targets and operate the technologies being used against them. They seem to be employing otherwise ordinary people for many of the tasks required in their operations, and ordinary people are not usually very well trained in covert tactics and the use of psychology. In fact, many of the people being used in these operations are probably not very intelligent at all, and are very gullible and easily intimidated, which is how they often get caught up in these activities in the first place. This is to the target's advantage, because, most of the targets are highly intelligent and creative, independent thinkers that are not cheap. I just added that I didn't read that. This is to the target's advantage, since this gullibility and timidity can be played on by the target, causing problems that will make these people slip up. With enough effort, a target might cause continual problems for their gang stalkers and force them to work harder or to even back off. A target must acquire a very thick skin if they're going to begin to fight back. Unless the assailants are using advanced mind control technologies such as directed energy weapons that affect the target's body and mind, it might be safe to make a game of the situation and be willing to up the ante to a point where the people directly acting against the target, such as those low-level monitors or street theater participants, they become uncomfortable with what they're doing, like when you call them out in a public way by name and profession. The assailants will look for anything that upsets their target, so the target should pretend very realistically and over the long term that certain things that their assailants are instigating are far more or far less upsetting to the target than they really are. The target will know that they're succeeding when these sort of events begin to occur more and more and more intensely. This will draw some of the perpetrators further out of the shadows and become more daring if they think they're actually succeeding or not succeeding in upsetting the target. Sort of like at 12:03 a.m. on October 1, 2024, the Marks family driving up and throwing soiled toilet paper on my driveway. But my camera caught it. This also gives the target the ability to test their own suspicions about whether they're really being targeted or not. Showing no fear seems to agitate the assailants, and challenging the low-level lackeys can easily cause them problems, confusing them in their efforts. Of course, it's not a good idea to challenge them directly face-to-face, but if, for instance, the target knows that there are hidden microphones in their home or workplace, they might take the opportunity to send their low-level monitors vocal messages that will agitate them or lead them on and make them want to react. But in doing so, they will reveal their involvement. Oh, I never do that. I never do that. Why would I do anything like that remotely? No, I would never do that. A target who is keenly aware of the signals that people give off when they are thinking one thing and pretending another will be able to discern if their counter tactics are effective or not when they see them face to face. And if they are, the target is in a position to push the envelope further in whatever way they can come up with to rock the boat harder and harder. And as I said, these people are only human and will react as humans tend to do when they're provoked to anger. Doing the unexpected could also throw them off. Suddenly doing things outside of normal habits or routine will upset the assailant's efforts if they rely on these routines in their methods of targeting as a person. For instance, if the target usually leaves for work every morning at the same time and is gone all day, then it might be worthwhile to see what happens if they come back 10 minutes after having left. It's important to follow instinct and do whatever can be done to shake up the efforts of the gang stalkers. Something that has been pointed out by another gang stalking target is that because these gang stalkers, these morons, are hired by people who do not want themselves or these activities to be publicly exposed, the gang stalkers, the MOPS, WOPS, COPS, POPs, and LOPS, the gang stalkers they hire are in many cases required to sign non-disclosure agreements when they're first recruited. And this means that they will probably avoid discussing the subject of gang stalking at all. This gives the target an advantage, at least if the target knows who any of their assailants are and can engage them in friendly conversation. That's not going to happen. And if this is possible, then the target can better determine if a particular person is wittingly involved in these activities. By approaching the suspected gang stalker in a friendly manner and bringing up the subject in some way, the target should be able to gauge whether the suspect might actually be involved or not. A suspected gang stalker who doesn't attempt to avoid any discussion of the subject may not be involved, but a suspect who avoids any discussion is very possibly involved and is worried about breaking their contract with their handlers. If this is the case, the person can be counter-targeted by the target through pressure until the person either begins to slip and say things they aren't supposed to, or is pulled out of the game by their handlers or quits under pressure. I guess that's where my next door neighbors disappeared to. Maybe they were pulled out of the game by their handlers, which was a smart idea. It was a very smart idea, but then they stuck this other moron in. Well, they don't have a choice. There are a lot of morons around here that they have to utilize. This, of course, may just draw more intense activities from them in the end, but if you have the strength and intelligence to face it and continue to fight back, you may eventually learn enough about these people to discover who is responsible for having them target you and expose them and their involvement publicly. They don't want this at all. Oh, you mean like exposing Ross Murray, the county lawyer, who's controlling the sheriff's department and everybody else? No, we won't do that. I think Richard Moore did that already. He had a nice photo of the little weenie boy up there. Yeah, they don't want this at all. Targets of mind control techniques and technologies need to understand that although this is a problem of potential global magnitude, and that anyone at all might be targeted, it's nonetheless an invisible crime. And apart from the targets themselves, most of the population is divided between those who are completely unaware of what's going on and those who do, but because they are wittingly involved, or are afraid of being targeted themselves, they pretend it doesn't exist. For this reason, it will do little to help the targeted person by telling others about the abuse early on, before substantial evidence can be gathered, if that's even possible. Well, I don't know, guys. I see a lot of you guys have evidence, and I know I do. I mean, it just seems so obvious, doesn't it? It must be understood what could easily happen if these gang stalking and mind control crimes were to be known about and accepted as a reality by the public at large without providing any evidence or facts. Well, you'd be surprised how many people are aware this is going on. A lot of people don't talk about it, though. And if this were the case, anyone who was troubled with their thoughts, who had a problem with their tyrannical neighbor, or whatever other problem they might have, might be tempted to lay the blame on a false cause. This would not help those with problems that are not caused by mind control techniques and technologies, and by extension, it would only hurt the people further who really are being targeted. And, of course, this has been part of the plan. It covers up the real problem and lets it grow and take root, while those who are victims of it tend to support the illusion of a society with a growing number of delusional characters who pose an increasing threat to our peace and security. And for this reason, more draconian steps are seen to be necessary and willingly accepted by the ignorant masses. And that was the last chapter of the book. Gang-Stalking and Mind Control. The Destruction of Society Through Community Spying Networks by A.K. Forwood, a targeted person. You know, the zombies, gang stalkers are the zombies. The zombie apocalypse are the gang stalkers. They want to control your mind and steal your soul because they don't have one. They want what you have. But anyway, this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, get the message out there. And please feel free to share. Share to your channel, whatever. It helps get the message out there. There are a lot of people, a lot of targeted people who have trouble reading, whose eyeglasses were stolen, like mine have been. So, you know, or do not have the ability to purchase books. So, you know, I'm glad to read whatever I have to you guys, and feel free to share it willingly. I'm going to sign off for now, and I will see you tomorrow.